the MLA budget for the first year, and it's not the full budget. This is a budget made up of beef producer levies comprising grass-fed, grain-fed, live cattle levies, processor levies, and some government contributions on R&D, and there is $124.5 million being spent this year. Now, you'll be pleased to know there's $8.9 million going on increasing cost efficiencies and productivity on farm. People, you're not doing your job. You're not efficient, you're not productive, and they're going to spend nearly $9 million telling you how to turn that around. Give me another 5 minutes. Okay. I reckon we can scrap $100 million off the thing, and I tell you we can get a better result. Here's our plan. Number 1, increase cattle prices. So how do we do that? We get in a comprehensive grading system that's clearly labelled and is consumer friendly. We then include every beast that is processed in that grading system and the entire carcass, not as is the current case, where it is only a percentage of the carcass and it is only a small percentage of the cattle that are processed. We then need to have promotion of the grading and promotion and marketing of red meat. Forget the silly orangutan and the red meat and the dancing Sam Neill. We need to gear it to the demographics and the success of a lot of the advertising that we see around. We need to open up access again to the EU market. We have been locked out of a lot of the EU markets, not because of requirements the EU put in place, but again, the Cattle Council went to the Department of Agriculture, and they, a bit like NLIS, they set the bar up here well above what the EU required, and they make it too difficult for you to produce the cattle that the consumer wants. The EU wants Australian cattle, and they can't get it because our people have made it too hard for you to give them the product. That has to be addressed. The second thing is we've got to completely reduce the industry costs. We need to get rid of all our statutory levies immediately. We need to stop the reserves being spent. We need the government to take over AQUIS costs now, 100% of the AQUIS costs. The EU Commission won't charge their people the AQUIS inspection costs because it said that it would make their processor and their producer uncompetitive. The EU needs to cover the costs. The US said by charging the processor AQUIS levies, it is only another tax on the consumer. They don't pass it on, they pay it. Australia pays it, and they're going to increase our costs. That has to go. We need to be a level playing field with our competitors. NLIS, the US refused to implement it. It didn't work, and it was an unnecessary cost. If our government thinks it's so great, let them take up the cost. Okay, as part of the stimulus package to get the Australian economy going, in 18 months, Kevin Rudd put $29.4 billion in either financial grants or tax incentives into Australian industry. What did agriculture get? We got nothing. So based on that, it would be cheap for him to take on those costs and keep our industry viable and to keep the 300,000 or 400,000 that are directly employed in our industry in a job. We need a complete restructure of our industry. Number one, it needs to be beef specific, not red meat, beef industry specific. It needs to be democratically elected. No R&D. The potential for manipulation and underhand and deals is to be taken completely away. It just gives individuals a commercial advantage against competitors. R&D is taken out of the agenda. It needs to have very clearly defined aims and functions, and they need to be reduced from what they are now. And most importantly, it needs to be regionally based. Not in the cities and not in Canberra. It needs to be local, where the people it represents live and work. And I would then also add that maybe the wage structure of this new entity is based on the average wage that the people it represents is earning. Okay, decentralisation, we've heard. No payroll tax for people in regional and rural areas, the zonal taxation that we've spoken about, improved infrastructure and services, and most importantly, the development bank that John spoke of. Now, what he didn't mention, and I know he told me, the most important thing about this development bank, if Barnaby's right and we've got a new government in 33 days, that means the end of August, we've got another government. We're not sure who it'll be. 3 months after that, if they're so inclined, this development bank could be in place. That means by Christmas, we're waking up to the best present Santa could bring us. We could be paying loans at 2 to 3% less interest, easier to access, and structured in such a way that it's manageable. But I believe the most important thing that needs to be added along with this development bank, limit it to Australian-only families and companies that are based in regional and rural areas, because we're competing with enough overseas companies that are getting it through their country's development, and we do not want our government guaranteed funds being provided to foreign companies. Now, all of this is achievable, but keep this in mind. It's been 5 months since the Armidale Forum. Since then, Tony Burke has ignored us. John Cobb, Shadow Primary Industries Minister, he's ignored us. Okay. I've got it. Okay, and in that 5 months, the MLA has wasted over $66 million of your money. So, what do? We've got an election coming up. And keep this in mind. We've got a $16 billion beef industry. 50% of that practically generates from Queensland. You've got two choices with major parties. You've got the LNP and you've got the Labor Party. And guess what? I've got bad news for you, Queenslanders. I got on the website of both those parties in the last week, 2 days ago to be exact. Neither one has any agricultural policies whatsoever. Keep that in mind. The Liberal Party, for the rest of Australia, not one agricultural policy. The Labor Party, not one. Yes, I will credit the Nationals. They've got a little bit of a policy there, and it's encouraging. But I'm going to say they've been in power for the past 11 years, before this last 2.5 years, and we still got the mess, and maybe it was implemented by them. So maybe they're not the saviour. It is up to us to put the pressure on them. So, how do we do it? We need the media on side. And as long as in Queensland you've got the rural press, we haven't got a hope. They want to give the propaganda of the MLA. They want to discredit when anybody holds a meeting and tries to put constructive criticism or opposing views or honest debate. And until such time as you can get honest reporting, and people who will set aside personal agendas, you're not going to get the message out there. I want to leave you with a very clear story, and then you can tell me the final thing here. Irish farmers were encouraging Irish supermarkets to buy Irish milk. To bring recalcitrant supermarkets into line, around 40 dairy farmers would turn up at a supermarket, fill the bottom of their trolleys with frozen food, top it up with heavy items, and put one container of milk on the top. At the checkout, they would ask, "Is this milk from Ireland?" And well, when they were told no, well, I'm not going to do my shopping here, and they would leave the trolley there. The staff had to then try and empty those 40 trolleys and get the frozen food back into the freezer. And do you know something? Within a matter of weeks, Irish milk was sold through all the Irish supermarkets. So, take a message from that.